The double under is the best fit for offensive linemen and tight ends on base blocks versus defenders in a head-up or shaded alignment coming out of a three-point stance. This technique allows players to lift defensive linemen by catching them underneath their pads while they are on the rise at the snap of the ball. Traditionally, players were taught to meet defenders across the line of scrimmage with their hat or their helmet, followed by the hands. This method is flawed on many levels for many reasons. From a pure performance standpoint, it prevents a lineman's ability to block movement on the line of scrimmage versus slanting or stunning defenders, which is a requirement for modern zone blocking schemes. Lunging at defenders or taking a large lead step also compromises our base and the ability to deliver force when driven by the hips. It is almost impossible to displace a defensive lineman with the helmet strike alone. To secure control of a defender and finish a block requires a fit with the hands and an uncoiling of the hips. The idea that helmet strikes are for punishing defensive linemen not only hurts players' performance, but it also carries long-term health consequences. Prior to contact, take appropriate footwork to square your hips to your opponent. Make sure your toes and knees are pointed outward, making way for the hips to extend. Both feet should be flat and rooted in the ground with your weight distributed on the insteps. Arch your low back with a forward body lean, maintaining your hands in front in the guard position. Begin to uncoil your hips while keeping your arms within the frame of your upper body and not visible from rear view. When your hands engage, they will be in the shake fit position with the thumbs pointed out at around 45 degrees. Contact occurs with a slight bend in the arms, somewhere between 120 and 160 degrees. This is required to achieve lift. All movement is initiated and all force is transferred by the uncoiling of the hips, which should resemble a wrecking ball from lateral view. The hands are just the conduit or the delivery system to power. To ensure your hands are transferring maximum force driven by the hips, the elbows must be pointed downward and no part of your upper extremities are visible from behind your body. Your hands will catch the defender's chest plate as he ascends from his stance, and this vertical force will deflect his momentum upward while taking weight off his feet. After contact, take very small steps toward your opponent as if you have your pants around your ankles. Bring your hips to his hips and notice the bend of your elbows increase for better control, somewhere between 60 and 90 degrees. As you do this, latch your elbows down and in toward your belly button and screw your thumbs out as much as possible without losing grip of the defender's breastplate. The shake fit is a two-handed strike for blocking opponents in space. Stock blocks by receivers, second level blocks versus linebackers for offensive linemen and tight ends, and pass protection for running backs. We call it the shake fit because the position of the hands resembles a handshake when contact occurs. This strike is most effective for these types of blocks because the impact shocks and disrupts momentum while at the same time lifts defenders, allowing sustained control and finish. Coaching points. Make sure your thumbs are pointed to the sky and your fingertips are bent and relaxed as you initiate the strike. As your hands close in on your opponent, draw your elbows in toward your midline with the points of your elbows pointed toward the ground. At the same time, extend the wrists to ensure your fingers are not involved in the impact. This will protect your fingers from injury and maximize the kinetic energy of your strike. The heels or palms of the hands are the surface that connects with your opponent. To be exact, the optimal striking point of the hand is the lunate bone, which can be found on your palm opposite of the thumb. We call this point of the hands the tip of the spear because it's the first and most effective part of the body to deliver impact. Make sure this bone is where your pressure is applied from, as it is the most dense part of your hand and it aligns directly with the ulna bone of the forearm, allowing the strongest and safest mechanical alignment to strike and resist force. Upon impact of the outer edges of your opponent's chest plate, your fingers should be protected as they fit within the softest area of your opponent, the armpits, allowing you to secure a grip to finish. Certain situations on the field call for shoulder contact as opposed to using the hands, especially collisions occurring between two players closing at high speeds. For example, a linebacker versus a lead blocker on a downhill run inside the tackles will likely involve shoulder contact by both players. An offensive lineman kicking out the end man on the line of scrimmage may use the shoulders to engage, or when pulling versus a second-level defender on gap scheme runs, like power. Shoulder contact is also used to tackle ball carriers in the open field. Before engaging with the shoulder, it's important to come to balance with a square base by lowering your center of gravity, keeping the head and eyes up, your spine upright, toes pointed out with the weight on the insteps of the feet, hands in front of the body, and the low back arched. The double pillar is a two-handed strike for defenders to engage blockers in close proximity and in space. For defensive backs, the double pillar is an effective tool to disrupt stock blocks by receivers. Linebackers can use it against offensive linemen climbing to the second level and defensive linemen on their initial get-off and strike of opponents across the line of scrimmage. Just as a vertical column can support the weight of massive structures, the pillar technique allows players to apply and resist incredible forces on the field when the strike lands straight with the arms at full extension. A common misconception is that power comes from the act of pressing an opponent. This is not true, as pressing requires a bend in the elbows, which actually serves as a shock absorber, hindering the ability to disrupt an opponent's inertia upon initial impact. Simply landing a punch at full arm extension isn't enough. Like all fits, force is initiated and sourced by the uncoiling of the hips. To ensure the arms can support the force of contact without engaging the head, it's critical to turn the thumbs outward, with elbows pointed toward the ground in the moments leading up to the strike. Make sure you're operating with a good triangular base and your core and upper back is engaged. This will offer a strong kinetic chain at the point of impact. The pillar gains additional support through the extension of the subscapular muscles of the upper back immediately following initial contact with an opponent. This extension adds length to the strike and enables defenders to soften an offensive player. Once a player develops the mechanics of this strike, develop the timing of the pillar through drills.